In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up your shots for multiplicity. It's important when you take your original shots that the camera is on a tripod and that you try to keep everything else in the scene but your partner or whatever you're taking a picture with, keep it stable so that when you align things, you don't have, for example, this chair in 3 different positions in your different pictures here. What you're trying to do is you're going to take your background image and then you're going to just select your partner or whoever you're taking a picture with, and you're going to put them on a new layer. Notice that the layer does not have to be perfectly selected because the images are aligned and they use a tripod. You don't have to be as careful when you select around the edge of your partner. First step would be to organize your pictures. So I chose to name these kind of where Alex was placed, and I'm using the back one as my bottom layer, and then I have a front and middle, just kind of where he was in relationship to the camera and the scene. Your first step in creating your multiplicity Photoshop document is to load your files into a stack. So you're going to go into the file menu, you're going to go into scripts, and then load files into stack. Similar to HDR and panorama, you're going to go into browse here, and I'm going to select my 3 pictures I took of Alex. Just hold shift down, you can grab those 3 pictures, you're going to bring those in, and you're going to hit OK. So my 3 files are now loaded. I want to organize these, so I'm going to take the back one, I'm going to drag that to the bottom so that they're organized kind of in relationship of where Alex is to the camera. So I want to use this back image as my backdrop, and then I'm going to select Alex just on these 2 layers here. Now right now my layers should be aligned because I took a tripod, I used a tripod, but in case they are slightly off, I want to go in and I want to auto align these. So I'm going to have all 3 layers selected over here, and I'm going to go into edit and I'm going to do auto align layers. Now, this should look familiar to you. This is very similar to the panorama project, but you're just going to use auto for this. It's not going to stretch anything because it's the same frame, and you're just going to hit OK. Now that your images are aligned, it's time to start selecting, in this case Alex, in your case your partner, on these top 2 layers. So this bottom one, I'm not going to have to change anything. He's in the background here. It's on these 2 that I'm going to select just Alex. So I'm going to turn everything else off to start, and I'm going to make that my current layer. I'm going to start with the quick select tool, and I'm just going to roughly select Alex. Not too concerned about how perfect this is. We're going to clean this up a little bit later. So we'll just go around and quickly get Alex here. And then down in the bottom right hand corner in your layers panel, I'm going to hit the layer mask button. And what that's going to do is paint a mask over top of everything that was not selected. Kind of think about it like if you were spray painting a detail on a car, you would cover everything with masking tape. This is the same sort of process. We are masking it with this layer mask over here on the right. You see the little thumbnail of the layer mask. Everything that is not selected is painted in black. Similar to the quick mask tool, we're going to use the paintbrush and eraser to add or remove that black. So I'm going to go into my eraser here, and it is important that your background layer is white so that we are actually erasing. And when we're editing, it's very important that we are editing the layer mask and not the layer itself. So if I click on this over here, I would be painting directly on that picture. I want to be editing the layer mask. So I can go around and just erase a little bit around the edge. So I'm bringing back, so I'm removing some of that mask around the edge in case I took a little bit too much. And we'll go back and clean this up kind of with the image on. So that looks pretty good. It looks like I'm not missing anything from Alex. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn my background layer on so I can see how that looks. Now if we zoom in around his arm here, we can see how the exposure was slightly different in this picture, and that's because Alex was closer, so the light was bouncing a little bit differently off of that wall. So what I'm going to do, so again we'll look at, this is where we are. I'm going to use the paintbrush here, and I'm going to take my brush and drop the hardness down. So basically we're going to feather this out. With the back layer on, I am now editing the layer mask on my front layer, and I'm just going to feather that out. Now if you turn this off, you'll see what's happening here. So I'm basically going around and making that selection blend a little nicer onto the background. You might not have to do this everywhere. Like, it looks pretty good over here on the books, maybe up here in between his hand. I would feather this out a little bit, clean that up. But everywhere else looks pretty good. Maybe just a little bit up around his head here. I'll feather that selection so that this is what I end up with. Again, it's not a perfect selection, but because they're aligned, it looks pretty nice. And then I'll repeat that process for the next layer. So I'm going to turn this layer off, and then I'll turn this layer on, everything else off. I'm going to go back to my quick select tool, and I'll just, again, roughly select Alex. And I'm also going to grab the chair here because that moved with him in this scene. So I'm going to grab all that. And then with this is my layer selected, I'm going to go to layer masks. So I got rid of everything else with that mask tool. And I'm going to bring a little bit more back. So over here, I'm going to go to my eraser, and I'm going to say, all right, well, I'm going to erase just a little bit around the edge of Alex so he looks a little better. Bring his shoulder back there. His boot looks pretty good. I'm going to erase a little bit of this because I know his leg is down here somewhere. There we go. And then I'm going to turn that background back on. In this one, I don't see too much that needs to be cleaned up, but again, I could use the paintbrush for that feathered edge, clean it up if I need to. I'm going to turn all those back on. That looks pretty nice, so I would want to save this as a Photoshop document and then save it as a JPEG before printing.